In our first example, we would like to show you how to write a program that reads this input from a data file. So let us read the question. It says all candidates' data for election is stored in an input file named elections.txt, and this is a sample of data inside the file. Each line consists of candidate's first name, number of votes, and gender, F for female and M for male. So as an example, in the first line, the candidate's name is Ahmed, the number of votes is 5,000, and the gender is male. The question is asking to write a Java program that reads the data from the file and does the following in parts. In the first part, it is asking to count and display the number of candidates and total votes. And this is a sample output for this part. To find the total candidates, this is a counting task. And to find the total votes, this is finding the sum task. In the second part, it is asking to display all candidates' first name, number of votes, and the percentage of votes. To compute the percentage of votes, you simply divide number of votes over total votes multiplied by 100. And this is a sample output for this part. A title is displayed, name, votes, and percentage, followed by the name, votes, and percentage for each candidate. For the last part, it is asking to display the name of the winner of the election and whether the winner is a male or female. And this is a sample output for this part. So a message will be displayed for this sample that we have in our file that the winner is Jasim and Jasim is male. After understanding what is required in each part of the question, let us discuss some of the implementation issues. The first question is, do we need to read the data that is inside the file and save them into arrays, an array for name, an array for votes, and another array for genders, or not? To answer this question, we need to see what is required in each part. Remember that if you want to do a certain task on the data, and if you want to pass over the data once, then you don't need an array. However, if you want to do a certain task and you need to pass over the data more than once, then you don't have a choice. You have to save the data into arrays. So let us see in the first part. In the first part, it is asking to count and display the number of candidates and total votes. So here we are counting and finding the sum. So there is no need to go over the data more than once. Simply you can pass over the data once and find the number of candidates and the total votes. We have already done this with Sentinel controlled while loop. We go over the data, we count, and at the same time, we find the total. So to do the first part, we don't need arrays. Let us read the second part. In the second part, it says display all candidates' first name, number of votes, and the percentage of votes. Now displaying the name and number of votes is not a problem. While reading, you can display them. But the problem with the third part, you need to display the percentage of votes, and to compute the percentage of votes, you need to divide number of votes over total votes. That means first you need to find the total, and then you divide number of votes over total votes. So therefore, you need to go over the data twice. In the first time you compute the total, and in the second time you need to divide the number of votes over the total votes for each candidate. So now we don't have a choice. We must save the data into an array. So therefore, the program needs arrays. For our next question is how many arrays do we need for our data? We are going to discuss two options. The first option is that we define 3 parallel arrays for each data. The first array will be of a string for the names, and the second array will be of integers for the votes, and the third array will be of characters for the genders. But we have to make sure that all of these arrays have the same size. And these arrays will work in parallel. What does it mean? It means if I know the index of one of the elements in any array, then we can use this index to access the elements of the other array. In the second option, we define a class that will have the name, votes, and genders as data members of this class. And then we declare only one array of this class. So which option is better? We prefer the second option because all data for a single candidate are made tied together and placed in one object. However, for parallel arrays, the candidates' data are separated in different places and saved in different arrays. So therefore, we are going to implement our program by first defining a class that will include the name and votes and gender for any candidate, and then we are going to create an array of this class. So let us go to JGrasp and do the implementation. Here we are in JGrasp. We have already prepared the input data file. We have typed the candidate's info inside the file and we saved it as elections.txt. To create a text file in JGrasp, you simply choose File, New, and you choose a plain text. To create a text file in JGrasp, you simply choose File, New, and you choose a plain text. Then you type the data inside the file, and to save it, you choose File, Save As, and then give it the name elections.txt. To save the time, I have already prepared a class for the candidates, and I have included the 3 private data members. One is a string for the first name, second is an integer for the number of votes, and third as a character for gender. Also, we have defined a constructor that will initialize all of these data members, as well as their corresponding getters and setters. For the main program, we have defined a class called candidates demo app, and we defined the main method inside it. So let us first define our data. We are going to create an array of type candidates. So we say candidates, which is the name of the class, and it is an array, and we are going to call the array candidate with a small letter C, and here we are creating number of candidates as an array. So we say candidate, but what is the size of the array? So how many elements we need to allocate for this array? Since we are reading from a file and save the data into an array, then we don't know how many lines we are going to read from the file. In other words, in advance, we don't know how many candidates information to read from the file. So therefore, we will assume that our program will handle maximum number of candidates, and accordingly, we are going to read from the file not to exceed this number. So we expect that our file can handle, let's say, maximum 500 candidates. So we will define a constant, and it will be public static final as an integer, and we are going to call it maximum candidates, which will be equal to 500. And we will use this constant for the size of the array. So now we are allocating this amount of candidates, and this is the maximum number of candidates that our program can handle. Next, we define the input stream because we are going to read from a file. So it will be a scanner, and we are going to call it nFile, and we will initialize it to null. Notice that we have already imported the class definition for a scanner, and also we have imported all the classes that are inside java.io, including the file class. So let us open the file. So we use a try, and inside try we try to open the file. We say nFile equal to new scanner, and inside we say new file, and the file name will be elections.txt, and we close the bracket for a try. Then we need to catch the exception, that is file not found exception, and we will give it exp, and inside the catch block, if there is an exception raised by the scanner, then we will print a message system.out.println, and we are going to say error opening the file elections.txt, and we are going to terminate the program. Also, there is one thing we forgot to declare, is the number of candidates that we are using from the array candidates. So it's an integer, and we are going to define it as integer, and we are going to call it cand count. Cand stands for candidates, and we will initialize it to 0. So every time we read a candidate information and we save it into the array, we increment this variable by 1. Next, we need to test that we don't have any problem in reading. So we will write the following loop. We will say while n file dot has next line, and this will test for end of line. We are going to read the line by saying n file dot next line, and then we print it on the output screen. So we are not going to read the data and save them into the array. We are going to simply display it on the screen for testing. And here we will say line. So we are going to read from the file line by line. And after we finish, we are going to close the file. So we need to make sure that our program is reading correctly. So let us run it. We have here a problem. I think we are adding one more S here, candidates. It is singular. So let us compile. So no problem. Now let us run the program and see what happens. And as you can see that the program is reading from the file correctly, but it is reading the data line by line. So now we need to read this data and save them into the array, one by one. Notice that in this while loop, we are reading the candidate's information line by line using nextLine method. However, we don't want to do that. For each line inside the file, we want to read the candidate's name, number of voters, and gender separately. We are using hasNextLine here just to make sure that we have a line of data that we are going to read for the candidate. So therefore, we have to remove nextLine method here and use the appropriate methods for reading the name, number of voters, and genders. So let us first read the name. So here we will say we have a string of type first name, and we are going to read it from the file by saying nfile.next. Next, we define an integer for the number of voters, and we are going to read it from the file by saying nfile.nextInt. Finally, for the gender, we are going to define a variable called gender of type char, and we are going to read it from the file by saying nfile.next. So we read it as a single word, and then we say char at 0 to extract the first character. So instead of reading the complete line using nextLine, we are going to read the data inside this line by using next for the name, nextInt for the voters, and next.charat for the gender. After reading the data for the candidate, we need to create an object and save it into the array. So here we will say candidate, which is the name of the array, candidate count, which is the size, equal to a new candidate as an object, and we are going to supply the first name, voters, and gender as input parameter to the constructor of the candidate class. And then we need to update the candidate count for the next candidate. To make sure that we are reading the data from the file correctly, we are going to print them on the screen. So here we will write first name, followed by a space, voters, followed by a space, plus gender. And then we will run the program and see the result. So let us run the program. We have an error. The error is a spelling mistake. Here we're supposed to say in capital letter. Run the program again. And as you can see now, it is reading and printing the data correctly. Now the data for all candidates are saved into an array. Let us go back to the problem statement and try to answer each part of the problem using this array. In the first part, we want to count and display the number of candidates and total votes. And this is the sample output for this part. We are going to display total candidates as, and we print the number of candidates, followed by a message total votes, and followed by the total of the votes. So let us go to JGrasp. First, we need to remove this line. We don't need it anymore. And now to count and display the number of candidates and total votes, we can do that while reading the data. For the number of candidates, we can get this answer from candidate count. And for the total, we can define a variable. It is called here total votes, and we initialize it to 0. And every time we read the data for a candidate, then we have to add the number of voters to this variable. So here we can say that total votes equal total votes plus number of voters. And this will answer the first part. So we need to print the two lines by writing system.out.println, and the message is total candidates is, and we display the number of candidates from the variable candidate count. And in the second line, we are going to display the total votes, println total votes is, and we are going to display the total votes from the variable total votes. And this completes the implementation of the first part, and we are going to write a comment that this will answer the first part. Before we proceed, we would like to check that we don't have any errors. And as you can see, it is printing total candidates is 15 and total votes is this number. Now for the second part, we need to display all candidates' first name, number of votes, and the percentage of votes as shown in the sample output. So we have 3 columns. We have a title, and the first column will be for name, second column for votes, and the third column for percentage. For the second part, first we need to display the title, and this will implement part 2. So we write system.out.println. First we display the name, followed by tab, followed by votes, followed by tab, and followed by the title percentage. Next, since we are going to display the name and vote and percentage for each candidate from an array, so we need to process the array sequentially. So we need a for loop for integer I equal to 0, the first index at 0, and I should be less than candidate count, because this is the number of candidates, and we have I plus a plus. In each iteration, we display the name, number of votes, and as well as compute the percentage. But instead of using a long name, for example, when you say candidate I, and then we say, for example, get first name, then we can save the reference of the object into a shorter name as a variable, and we use this variable name. So here we can say candidate, and we will call the variable CAND, short for candidate, and in every iteration we are going to save the reference of candidate I into this variable. And then we can use this variable to display the name, votes, and percentage. So system.out.println, first for the name, CAND.get first name. This is the getter for the name, followed by a tab, followed by CAND.get votes, the getter for number of votes, followed by a tab, and then followed by the equation that computes the percentage. So here we will display the value of the percentage, followed by the symbol of the percentage sign at the end. So let us write the equation. So here we are going to divide number of votes, so CAND.get votes divided by total votes multiplied by 100. But we are going to get an integer, because number of votes, total votes, and 100 are all integer. So we need to do a typecasting so that the answer will be in double. I will simply convert number of votes into double, and then we will have double divided by integer will be double, multiplied by 100, it will be double. Let us run the program for testing. Now the program is running, so let us see the result. And the result we have here, we have the title and the previous message. We need to separate them, so we need to add here a new line. As you can see, the output is not printed well in tabular form using single tabs between the titles. I will leave it as an exercise for you to make the changes. For the last part, the question is asking to display the name of the winner of the election and whether the winner is a male or female. And this is the sample output for this part. Finding the winner of the election is in fact finding the candidate with the maximum votes. So this is a task of finding the maximum value of an element inside an array. If this element is an object, then it is better to track the index of the object that has the maximum value. Therefore, if you want to print the other information that is related to this object, you simply use this index. For our example, while finding the candidate with the maximum votes, whenever you find a candidate that has the number of votes greater than the maximum number of votes, then simply save its index. Then use this index to print the name of the candidate as well as whether male or female. Let us show you how to implement this. So we write a comment that we are implementing part 3. And first we will assume that the first candidate is the winner. So we say integer and we will say win index, and the winner is at index 0. Notice here we are not recording the maximum votes. We are recording the place of the candidate that has the maximum votes. So we write a for loop that will start from the next candidate, which is 1, because we have already assumed that the first candidate has the maximum votes. And then we will say I is less than candidate count, and we will have I plus a plus. Now, in each iteration, we have to check the votes for the current candidate with the votes for the candidate with the winning index. So we say if candidate, which is the current candidate, is I, dot get votes. If it is greater than the candidate that is at win index, also get votes. If this is the case, then we need to change the winning of the index, and we say win index is equal to the current index, which is equal to I. So inside the loop, we are tracking the index of the object for the winner candidate, so that later we can use this index to access any data related to this object, such as name, number of votes, and gender. After finding the index of the winning candidate, which is saved in win index, now let us use it to get the name and the gender of this candidate. Simply we are going to print the message by saying system.out.println, and we will say that the winner is, and here we need to display the name of the winner candidate. So it is saved into win index. So we write candidate and win index get first name followed by the message is, and now here we need to display whether male or female. Notice that the gender inside the file is saved as a single character, M or F, but it is not saved as the keyword male and female. So therefore we are going to close this print statement, and we are going to use only print, and we will follow it by another print so that the message will appear on one line, and then we will say if the gender of the winner candidate, let's say M, so we say candidate win index, we get the gender. If it's equal to capital letter M, because the gender in the file we used only one letter, which is capital letter M, so there is no need to test for a small letter m. So if this is the case, then we are going to print system.out.println. We are going to print the word male. Otherwise, we are going to print system.out.println. We are going to print female. And this completes the implementation of the third part. Now let us run the program and see the result. So now we are running the program. Let us check. But we are missing the word and in the output. So we have to say the winner is Jasim and male. And also we need to leave a new line before displaying the winner name and gender. So let us run the program again, make this a small correction. So here we have to say a new line. And then here we need to add and. So let us run it and see the result again. So it is displaying that the winner is Jassim and is male. It is correct that the winner is Jassim because if we check for Jassim, that it has the maximum votes, which is 6,000. And this completes the implementation of our program.